page if you had something. yeah, oh yeah, we'll talk about what that means. That's sort of a wartime term, but, yeah, remind me, we'll discuss that first. And we'll go over number 3 as well. I'm sorry, I can't. Your head. That's good, you'll have to do it with. A lot of times in war, we talk about this word, tides. What is a tide? First of all, if you think about the word tide, what do you think of initially? What does it normally refer to, Aaron?
Isn't the tide kind of like, the only thing I can think of is like from an ocean or
Right.
perspective to where like when it's low tide, not much water is in an area, but when it's high tide, there's a lot of water.
Yeah,
in a certain
exactly,
area.
yeah. So in the natural world, it refers to basically the coming in or the pulling away of water to create a certain depth, basically. So in the context of war, then, when we talk about turning a tide in war or stemming a tide in war in this case, a tide refers basically to just like a turning point. And so what we're talking about here is up until this point, Japan has been able to go through and conquer all of these various nations, a lot of which were islands in the Pacific, such as the Philippines and little countries like that. And so when we talk about how the Allies stemmed the tide of Japan, it means that they're doing just that. They're cutting it off. They're creating a stem or a cutoff point, and so the Japanese are sort of like halted where they are. So we'll just put to cut off, or in other words, just to stop. And the reason why I use this language, for all of the headings, I always use the title of what's given in the book, this section, and then I just kind of write out like the main ideas underneath each one. So, but yes, as I was reading that too, I had to read it through twice and, oh, okay, this is what they're doing here, so. Sometimes war jargon is used or historical jargon is used, and so if there's something that you don't understand, just ask, because there's a lot of oddly worded things sometimes throughout the book, so. Okay, so we have Japan at this point, and this is roughly 1945. They've taken over, they now account for 150 million people, which is a huge population. And so we'll kind of talk about number 3, and we'll list some things here that America specifically and the Allies did in order to defeat Japan. So obviously the major thing in the end was the 2 atomic bombs. We'll put a little star next to this. This certainly led to the defeat, and you could say that this was sort of the last resort. Maybe we'll say the second bomb was the last resort, right? We did 2 of them. What happened with the first bomb after it was dropped? How did Japan react to the first atomic bomb? Think about how we had to drop a second one. How do you think Japan reacted the first time? Aaron, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say they panicked, maybe.
Well, yes, probably, but also they didn't give in, they did not surrender. They held fast, and so, and they just kind of took it. And so then we decided that we were going to drop a second atomic bomb. And what were the numbers of people that were killed in both of these cities, roughly? What kind of numbers are we dealing with here, Maddie?
200,000.
200,000, yeah. I'm trying to remember what the exact population of Fort Wayne is. I think it might be around 300,000 now. But think about that, like basically 2/3 of a city annihilated, like in the course of a few hours. So this is a huge impact that this new weapon has on wartime and on history in general. We'll put, You'll also notice too, that at this point, we now have a new president, Harry Truman, and so he was the one who kind of took over this project. What happened to Roosevelt? Where did he go? Because he was reelected for a 4th term. Paige?
Well, I have a question, but
Question?
I also have an answer for that.
Sure.
Well, are you just asking like what happened, like how he died?
Yeah.
Well, okay, he was posing for like a photograph, like a portrait, and had a heart attack and just died.
Yeah.
So that was sad, and then President Truman went into office that night. But my question was about the atomic bombs, because
Sure.
like you hear about them a lot, and it's a big deal. And, you know, we don't want to use them because
Right.
it's just a lot of extra stuff that doesn't really need to be done.
Right.
But they kind of gave some examples in the book of like just the scenes, and it like just seemed really gruesome. But I'm kind of confused. Like, is it just a normal bomb that's just like bigger than like the other things, or is there like something different in it? Like, how does it work?
Well,
What is its work?
it's just way more powerful on a way more grand scale, and the science behind it, I couldn't begin to describe to you what I'm sort of an ignoramus when it comes to that. But Holly, do you have an answer? What were you gonna say?
Well, I know
On
that
this one.
like an atomic bomb gives off radiation.
Yes.
Because my
Yes.
grandma
Yes.
had her best friend was there when one of the atomic bombs was dropped, and she had problems the rest of her life. She pretty much had like leukemia because she was exposed to radiation. So
Yeah.
it's a big deal.
Yeah, I think that with the atomic bombs, most people assumed, I mean, it did kill a lot of people just because of the impact and the catching of things on fire and whatnot and the destruction. But I think also that, and it mentions this in the book as well, that the radiation from the materials that were used to create the bomb had these lingering effects and killed just as many people through disease and this condition that Holly's describing, if not more. So, how is it different from a normal bomb? I mean, I guess it's way more powerful, spans a larger land area, much larger land area than we've ever come up with before, and just seem to have much more of an impact than, the other bombs that we were used to using during warfare. We would have bomber planes, which would, go over cities or regions or wherever we wanted to drop them, but they would typically just hit very specific targets. So to drop an atomic bomb that annihilates a whole city in one foul swoop that covers a huge land area. So think in your mind how big Fort Wayne is land-wise, and how much surface that covers. It's really kind of unfathomable, actually. Questions, Olivia?
I think, I don't know if this is right, but I think
Yeah.
it's like the atomic bomb is when they like squish two atoms together and that creates the explosion
Yeah.
and that doesn't happen in normal bombs?
I
then?
guess so.
Okay.
That's kind of my understanding as well. And like it was describing in the book here, and this Manhattan Project, every once in a while you'll hear about this, and I mean, scientists in the United States spent years and years working with this sort of technology, and for a while it was kept a secret because obviously, you know, just because you have the power to do something doesn't mean you should ethically, right? So there are all of these debates going on about this within the science world, and so yeah, it just was like nothing we'd ever really seen before, I guess. Other thoughts on the science behind atomic bombs? Anyone else know any information, Maddie?
Well, I know there's atomic bombs and then there's hydrogen bombs, and
Mhm.
hydrogen bombs are even worse, or even more powerful, I think.
Yeah.
And it, yeah, like Olivia said, it like does something with like the energy inside of the atom.
Yeah.
And I've heard that like if an atomic bomb would explode in like Indy, the windows in like a villa would shatter. So it's like that powerful, I guess, to give like a scale. I don't know, I heard that's just viewpoint.
Yeah, that's interesting. Other thoughts or questions, Marnie, and then Paige, and then Erin?
Well, like being in science classes with Mr. Bye, he
Yeah.
would say that like
Oh, I'm
usually,
sure he could explain, he
Yeah.
could do diagrams and all kinds of things for it, I'm sure.
usually in like normal bombs they have chain reactions with the atoms, like one like will like go off and it'll like hit the rest, but
Like a
with like an
chain
atomic,
reaction.
pretty much what's happening is the splitting of the atom and the radiation within the bonds within the nucleus.
Okay.
So then it like
So there's so much energy that had been condensed, and then with the setting of it off, it just kind of goes insane. Okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Other things, Paige?
I guess, I don't even know if you can answer this or not,
Mhm.
but like when we like go and drop the bomb to the people who are doing it, is that like a suicide mission for them, or are they able to escape from that?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't think that, typically in the United States, we didn't, ever encourage
Yeah.
a kamikaze sort of mission, right, where it's known, it's assumed that the pilot is going to die. But I don't know. It would seem like if it covers so much area that it would have been difficult for them to get out of there in
It's
time.
like I didn't know if you could like control the timing of it, or if it was just like when it hit land it exploded, or I don't know.
I don't know. That's a good question. Something to look into. Yeah, I don't know. That's a very good question. Erin?
My question is not really about the bomb, but do you think that about that first thing you said about the word tide,
Yeah.
do you think that's where the phrase turning the tides comes from?
Yeah, I
Or
do.
the tides are
Mhm.
turning?
Yeah, because we talk about the tide turning at various points in the day in reference to the ocean, and so I think for whatever reason this word just became associated with wartime as well. You know, enemies rise in their power, and then they're pushed back, and so it's kind of, you know, we see this giving and taking, and so yeah, I think you're right. I think it comes from that. Yeah, Holly?
I just have like a comment to make.
Sure.
I think that it was, I understand that like it might have been the last resort to drop like an atomic bomb, but I personally don't think it was necessary to annihilate several cities and like cause so much damage, because there are people that are still living in Japan that have like problems from the radiation and and especially since they dropped two, like I just think it was kind of almost cowardly of the US to do that, because they didn't want to go in there and actually like talk to, you know, Hideki and, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, for sure. Yes, and a lot of people feel that way as well. yeah, it was pretty vicious. It's a pretty vicious thing for us to do, although I suppose wartime is vicious in itself, but something else that I wanted to discuss, well, first of all, are there any other questions or comments about the atomic bomb? Okay. I also want to talk about the Nuremberg trials. And I just have this simple sentence up here. But basically, what took place during the Nuremberg trials? Where were they? What was the purpose of these, Olivia?
Like, I think it was 12 of the highest ranking Nazi, like Hitler's trusted allies, were tried in courts for like the crimes that they had committed and things.
Yeah, and they were kind of the first ones, and then we tried numerous other people who were involved on the Axis side of things. Typically the main leaders, like Olivia just said, and then trickled down. And what are some ways in which we prosecuted these people? Or in other words, what were they found guilty of? How were they punished in the end? And it wasn't just America that was doing this. It would have been just the Allied representatives in general, but. We did give a lot of people death sentences out of it. We sentenced a lot of people to long prison time. In the aftermath. The Nuremberg trials are important because we have never before held people responsible for acts that they've committed during wartime. Typically, the understood agreement between countries is that whatever people do during a war is more or less forgiven after the war, because war in itself prompts people to do violent things and things that they wouldn't normally do in peacetime. But we decided that because World War II was so vicious, and we had, the atrocity of the Holocaust, and we had other countries where the dictators were killing off millions of their own people, and trying to take over the world, that we would try at least to, punish those who we felt were responsible for all of these deaths and so forth. What are any thoughts or opinions on this? Do you think this should be done in all wartime? Typically it is to some extent, but
I just have like a comment, because
Sure.
I know that, Switzerland always says that they're like neutral, but they helped a lot of like the war criminals escape, and like they helped them to like find basically a new life, and some of those people are still living today. Like there was an article, I think in the Journal Gazette a couple months ago, and it talked about, they found this man who has been hiding out in like Minnesota, and he's like one of like the really high up people who had to like kill all the Jews and like the concentration camps. I was just like, it made me, I was like infuriated as I was reading it, because like he's able to live while he killed all those people, and it's like that's not how life works. Like you don't just get to get away with that.
unfortunately, you do.
Unfortunately he did, but
Yeah,
it just,
we wish
it made
life
me
wasn't like that.
It made me so mad.
Yeah, that is very maddening for sure. Thanks for sharing it, Marlene, and then Paige.
I guess it's kind of like how you look at it from different points of views, because like even though I feel like it is justified, but a lot of those leaders, they killed indirectly, because most of the time they wouldn't exactly be doing the murder.
Yes.
But they're still getting prosecuted for it, so the same thing could go for our country, because they're the ones that murdered the 250,000 people indirectly. So I guess it's just like what the people find fair.
Right. And because the Allies won the war, we didn't have to, our responsibility was skirted, it was forgiven in a sense, at least by, at least within our own countries. I'm sure that the Axis powers felt very differently about that. Paige, what were you going to say?
I have a lot of same thoughts that Marnie had there, and like, I know I have a hard time with this one, like trying to reason it out within my own head,
Yeah.
because, it seems like a logical thing would be like, yeah, they need a punishment, like that's what they did, but clearly like, we didn't get punished for that, and I don't know, like personally, I just feel like that should be able to be forgiven, and I know people are probably going to be mad at me for saying that, but like, I mean, if it was part of the wartime thing, like, he's under a dictatorship anyways, where
Mhm.
someone's telling him to do this or you are going to die.
Right.
So, I don't know, I just feel like we're so far behind that, like, I feel like it's time to be able to just say, you know what, that was wrong, but like, you can be forgiven for that and like continue to go on with your life.
Right.
I don't know. That's just
Right.
kinda how I
Well,
feel
and
about it.
also, you know, I mean, if your country agrees to go into war, then you are also agreeing to the mass killing of a lot of your civilians and a lot of your troops. And, I mean, that would sort of be like a parent, you know, bringing their child into a candy shop and then punishing the child for eating a piece of candy. Right? I mean, you made the decision to take the kid in there and you're giving them all, you know, and so it's kind of something like that. So a lot of people, even people from the Allied, you know, countries were, kind of didn't know what to make of this, because again, we hadn't done this before post-war, any other time throughout history. But on the other hand, I think that for a lot of people in the Allied countries, they felt some sort of justice or like resolution, you know, to things that had happened. So, yeah, it's just sort of an interesting concept. Other questions, Maddie and then Olivia?
I always have a hard time with the death penalty, like, because I feel like it brings the person, like the country who's giving the person the death penalty down to their level, because you're killing the person too. But I just have a hard time with it, because I know they
Yeah.
did horrible things, but are you willing to kill them? I don't know.
Right.
But,
Do deaths on top of more deaths,
Yeah.
is that solving anything really? Yeah, I
Two
understand.
wrongs don't make a
I
right.
don't,
I understand,
yeah, I don't
sure.
know what, I don't have a better option though,
Mhm.
like, if, I don't know,
Yeah,
but, yeah, I forget what I was gonna say, but.
that's okay, we can come back to you if you think of it. Olivia?
The Nuremberg trials kind of make me think, even though Hitler was crazy and I don't agree with him, how like his plan, even though it was wrong, was kind of impressively done because
Very impressive.
he like cowardly killed himself so he didn't have to deal with anything.
Right,
And all the people he brainwashed, well, some of them probably fully knew what they were getting into, but
Right.
a lot of people were probably brainwashed into it. Now they're taking